Hello everyone, today in this video we will fight against the atmospheric of our world around us, as we always do in this channel. And we know that this is special period nowadays, this is end of the calendar year, so in this period many people tend to talk about prognosis for the next year or upcoming years. And we have to remember that prognoses are always prognosis, nothing more, and reality will show as in the future what will really happen. And it's like with the results of theoretical calculations, that they will always stay results of theoretical calculations, and later they have to be verified with experiments, and they always correspond to the experimental results in a to larger or to lesser extent, never in 100%. And the same thing applies to prognosis, even worse, because we know that people who are making these prognosis, they want to have more and more views, more and more followers on their channels, YouTube, Rumble, or whatever, because more views, more followers equals more money. So we know that the more controversial content the material has, the more viewers it will get. So always these people try to envision wars, diseases, other calamities, and so on and so on. But if we take our mind in order, if we organize it in order and try to think rationally, what can happen, we will clearly see that after Cold War, later we had terrorism from the third world, and now we have pandemism, environmentalism, and yeah, because recently famous microbe from China, it's not so famous anymore, so now we are tormented with allegedly detrimental climate change, and soon we will be tormented, and at the same time we are tormented by media by war. uh, Soon there will be most likely media food crisis, and soon you will mention my word, we will see many holograms of UFO displayed in this region or that region, that would be used to justify many drastic measures and another transfer of wealth, this time to the military complex companies. And this is what we can envision. This is actually very well in line to this what Mr. Werner von Braun said in one of his interviews he was rarely giving to the journalist. At the turn of 1950s and 1960s, he claimed that nowadays the enemies are Russians, so Soviet Union those days. Soon there will be someone from the third world. So we had at the 1990s and early 2000s very much hysteria campaign of terrorism in media that resulted in many limitations and restrictions in the avian traffic, that when we travel with planes we have to be checked, and our luggage is scanned like anything is scanned more than anything else, and due to the in quotation safety rules we are also scanned and checked like hell, and these measures were promised to be introduced temporarily. We see that this temporarily lasts till now. So we see what was the real purpose of this hysteria of terrorism at the end of 1990s and the beginning of 2000s. And one has to remember that in 1970s especially, terrorism in Western world, especially in Western Europe, was much more common, and many people died, and there were many terroristic attacks and incidents. One has to mention, financed by Soviet Union, Rote Arme Fraktion in Western Germany, acting mainly there, Rose Brigadi in Italy, and at the end of Franquist rule in Francoist Spain, ETA, Basque Marxist organization, that was also performing many terrorist attacks. And somehow in 1970s no one was making any media hysteria on terrorism, but in 1990s and 1970s, guys who are ruling this world, so people from governments and corporations and some more or less secret organization, decided that we will terrorize people with self-organized, actually organized by them, terrorism from the third world. And there was a guy, face of this so-called terrorism, Mr. Mr. Bin Laden, who in my opinion never existed, and his famous Al Qaeda, which actually was not the thing we think it was. Actually, there are always many organizations in the world of frustrated people who would like to destroy their realistic or imaginary opponents. And these groups of frustrated people are used by the Secret Service and mm, agents of influence of different states, governments, and people representing corporation just for their own interest. These people are used to scare population and to force population of some countries or around the world to be more obedient to the will of the government and to be more controlled. And now, after this pandemism, because you cannot continue with one trick all the time, we are attacked by environmentalism slash climatism, that we have to limit our habits, we have to change them for the sake of the planet. Of course, it's another pseudoscientific bullshit. We know many scientists, unfortunately, are like artists, and artists are like prostitutes. They serve the ones who pay, and we have to always be cautious what we hear from them, and also from people who are making prognosis for the future. One thing is sure, after Cold War, of course, the most dangerous peril mentioned by me in this movie so far was Soviet Union. But during Cold War, also Soviet threat was used more than ever, was used to larger extent than it really was, because Western governments wanted to tame the societies according to their own interest. So by inducing fear against Russians larger than it should have been, they were introducing another limitations on the personal freedoms of the Western citizens. And now the same is happening with this pandemics, environmentalism, and like previously in the 1990s and early 2000s was done, had been doing with this terrorism from the third world. And currently we should expect soon UFO holograms, just to justify another huge military spending and control of people, because there will be some extraterrestrial enemy. According to the plan, a little bit modified, that was presented by Mr. Werner von Braun, who after Second World War was working for the some secret agencies of US government. And many governments have such agencies, and they really think how to squeeze money from us and reduce our freedoms. That's why we need to be aware of this. And luckily, Mr. Werner von Braun had a moment of honesty, and he shared this what he knew with the journalist. Of course, he shared with him simplify diagram, because at those days maybe they were not thinking about pandemics and environmentalism so much. So we have two more elements, but we see that they stick to this scheme because it seems to be working, just to have population terrorized and under control, and freedom of people gradually limited. So this is what will happen in the next years if we allow for this. It's all depend on us. That's why we need to oppose, and we need to be aware of this what's happening. Everything is in our hands. It won't be easy, but I believe that we will make it. Take care and have a nice day. Bye.